everybody. So conventional wisdom is to begin a talk with a joke. I'm going to actually begin with two apologies and a caveat. The first one is that you didn't really think you were going to get through this conference without seeing the word microservices, did you? So what I will tell you is that this talk is not about their virtues as much as it is their struggles and what we did to overcome them. The second apology is that I realized after putting this talk together that there's no way I can tell this story in 15 minutes properly. Dustin's probably going to have to kick me off the stage. But if I don't get to address the question, I'm here all day and happy to talk. So the caveat is that this talk isn't really so much about Scala as it is about the side effect of adopting Scala for the purposes of microservices. So it's a little bit different. I was actually quite surprised. We weren't even sure we were going to submit it, but it was voted in, and here I am. So you only have yourself to blame. I'm the VP of Engineering at Giphy. I'm also a co-organizer of this conference, but Dustin really deserves all the credit, so give him a pat on the back. We are hiring at Giphy. We've got a few open positions. It's up on the board, but we do you might be surprised at some of the interesting problems that we have. People are usually sort of unsuspecting. Who uses the Slack plugin? Yeah, that's like our best recruiting tool. Okay, so another thing you should know is that I didn't actually build the thing that I'm going about to talk to about. Matt Eldridge and Sean Carey, who are our DevOps engineers, did. They're very, very talented and very, very experienced. So I'm going to try to do their work as the best give it the best credit that I can. So Giphy's about 4 years old. Spent the first few years in just sort of rapid development mode, just busting out product after product as quickly as we could, building our API as big as we could. And I think we've achieved a measure of success. We've got many billions of GIFs served a day, many billions of API requests per week. I can hear my sort of ad tech and big media peers scoffing at those numbers, but I assure you, for a consumer sort of public-facing API, these are pretty solid. We're doing some good numbers. So we moved real fast. We built this big monolith API, as so many have before us, and a PHP. Sorry, I wasn't going to say that word out loud, but I accidentally did. It's a monolith application. I'm kidding, of course. But and it really served our purpose, but at what cost? So the code became a little bit difficult to maintain, and we made a choice about 6 months ago to move to a Scala microservices ecosystem. We had Scala other places for data engineering purposes, so it made sense. So we've got all of these fantastic benefits that we all know about, right? They're scalable. You can sort of just scale the in-demand systems, and you get all of this great flexibility there. They're resilient. If service A depends on service B, and service B is core to your feature set, you can just sort of ignore it and let your main sort of business logic continue on. It's great. You can have independent development cycles on each of the subsystems. You have language independence. If you agree on a wire protocol, it doesn't matter what the sort of underlying technology is between two systems. If you use JSON over HTTP or your sort of flavor of the month wire protocol, whatever it happens to be, that sort of liberates you in that way. And finally, they're easy to deploy and manage in production, and they're easy to develop and test. Does anybody see any problems in these slides? This slide. These last two are terrible lies. And in fact, if anyone's ever sold you that, I mean, I guess, under certain constraints, it's not a lie. If you have a really small team and you're just sort of one technology and you have a really good distribution of tacit knowledge within that team, you can probably sort of get away with that. But it was not our experience, especially since we had other technologies to sort of consider. So we were, as I said, we were sort of the intent is to sort of slowly migrate features out of this monolithic API and PHP and report them over to Scala microservices. But we have no intention of getting rid of Python. We may, in fact, write some microservices in Python, and that's sort of something that we're doing. So we're sort of, there's some deployment challenges there. For example, Sean Carey likes to say, one of the guys who developed this is like, I don't want to know how the sausage is made. Sometimes it's better not to. If you've ever read The Jungle, then you know that. But in any case, you have to kind of learn all of the technical debt of every subsystem or every technology stack in order to deploy. And if you want to do advanced stuff like blue-green deploys, forget it, it's really painful. And then for development, it's also super painful because if service A depends on service B, that means when you're developing service A, you need to have service B running. You get a couple of choices. Maybe you can mock out service B. That really only gets you so far, and you're kind of hiding the problem. You can run both of them, but then service B might depend on things, and you can see where that goes very quickly. If you have a shared environment, then you have people trampling on each other. In Slack, if you've ever seen, is anybody using QA? You might have this problem. So at first, the first attempt at dealing with this kind of condition was really no attempt at all. We didn't really know what we had sort of done to ourselves. So we just tried to kind of do what we have been doing, which is run everything locally, independently, no problem. But there's a bunch of problems with this approach. Everybody really screws up their own laptop in their own special snowflake way. You sort of carry via user migration across 3 MacBooks, and you suddenly have a pip version that's 5 years old, and you're particular. The point being, there's no local sort of standardized configuration for a laptop, so it makes setting this thing up non-standard and painful. And we found that to run an entire system took an experience. Getting that up and running took a lot of institutional knowledge and wasn't easy. And then, of course, your environment that you're developing in is very different from the environment that you'll ultimately deploy in. So you're obscuring integration bugs until much later, which is very wasteful in terms of time. Also, things like cluster management and so forth are very painful. I mean, if you want to spin everything up and then tear it down sort of in one go, that's actually not trivial, right? All right, so this was us, naive, kind of inefficient with our own tooling, but we did recognize the mistake and realize that we had to do better. So there was a stab taken, and said, you know what, we just containerize everything. That's what those things are for. Who knows what a container is? All right, so that's great. I don't really have to explain it. But who knows what Kubernetes is? Oh, okay, good, a lot of you. Well, very quickly, Kubernetes is sort of like a sort of an orchestration engine for containers. It's kind of like a giant scheduler with tons and tons of features. It can do all sorts of things: resource management, app co-location, auto-scaling, service discovery, like you name it. It does a lot of different things, and it works with Docker containers. So this sounds great. So maybe what we can do is sort of run Kubernetes locally and then somehow punch a hole through in the container such that you can sort of edit code and then have that container sort of absorb that new code as you're developing. And so you can kind of spin up a Kubernetes locally, run everything, edit code on a particular service that you're iterating on, and then instantly see your changes. And that seems like be a great idea. That would be really cool. So that's what was done. We built on top of Minikube and Xhive a system that did something like this. And it was awesome until we actually tried to use it. Then we discovered that trying to sort of download 500 gigabyte databases to people's laptops as a sort of thing that you do is not always the best idea. And then, like I said before, no local standardized configuration. Everyone kind of messes up their laptop in their own way. So we ended up sort of trying to pare down the data sets that were in play, but at a load average of 90, and we just, and then sort of, it was really hard at 16 gigs of memory. It was impossible at 8 to run this full microservice architecture locally. So, oops. This is, I think, a very good characterization of exactly where we were. Is it playing? There we go. That's exactly right. It was awesome, like big wine, like roundhouse kick, like just totally missed the target. But there were a couple things that were really nice about the work that we had done, which is that we had sort of done the hard work of figuring out how to sort of sync code between the container and the local host using just some shared file system and some sort of configuration in Docker. And so that was the sort of aha. Sorry, I keep mucking with my slides here. That was sort of the aha moment. 5 minutes. That was the aha moment, like, oh, why don't we just spin up a new EC2 instance and sync to there? We've already written the code to sort of do the syncing. So that sort of makes it very easy. And that lifts the resource constraints, and that's sort of like, all of a sudden we can have a full production-like system ready and spun up for a developer in just a few commands. So with actual full real data sets, you can run real good tests, real good integration tests very easily. You can kill it, turn it back on in just a few minutes. So it's actually really, really nice, just a handful of commands. And this is how sort of giphykube sort of evolved from these insights. So we took something pretty complex and pared it down to just a few commands to sort of, that would unify the way you did development and deploys in development as well as in any other environment. So you can run, a new developer can run the entire Giphy on the first day in 30 minutes. You get the experience of local development when it's actually happening remotely. A nice little fun extra feature is that another developer can connect to your instance of giphykube and kind of go in and debug for you quite easily, which is nice when you're sort of working on a hard problem and you need another set of eyes. There's actually also some really great continuous integration pipeline integration that I'll show you a little bit more of in a second. This is it in action. It fires up a tmux and it shows some bootstrapping information along with some performance information on the right. I would talk you through it, but I'm definitely going to run out of time if I try to do that. But is it playing? Yeah, it is. Okay. But you can see it sort of shows you like it lifting up the systems and then some performance information, the processing, how the processes are doing, and top is running down there on the bottom. So it's kind of a convenient little thing. And so when you after the first time you spit it up, it takes a little while to get it going, but then subsequent starts are very quick. So this is sort of how giphykube fits into our larger ecosystem of development tools. So the bottom left-hand corner is the Giphy developer, and that sort of left-hand column is that sink that I was referring to earlier, in which we've punched holes in the container to allow us to sort of push code up onto a system. And so that's giphykube running in the top left. You could have many of them if you so desire, but I think the intent here is to show that we have many of them in our own sort of dev shop, one per developer. So when a developer is ready, they can sort of push to GitHub their feature, which will then head into the Travis continuous integration tool, which emits a couple of artifacts. One of them is the Docker container that's specially configured for this purpose and can be pushed back out onto giphykube. And then the other one is the sort of production candidate, perhaps, that can go to a QA system or a production system. And then, so hopefully that gives you an idea of the flow. And again, I can't stress how nice it is to sort of be able to work in the exact same type of approach that you would deploy in production. So adding new services is actually surprisingly easy. It's just a YAML file and a Docker file with some particular inputs that you have to provide. You get all the features of Kubernetes. And it's only about $300 a month to run for us for a particular Giphy developer if they just leave the EC2 instance running the whole time, which is actually quite affordable. And in practice, we don't leave them running the whole time. So it's pretty cheap. Kubernetes is a little complex, but we've made it actually quite a bit easier with this sort of layer of commands. So let's see here. Is he dancing? Nope, there he goes. All right, so the point of this really is that we've built this particular tool because it addressed a real need. It solved for our sort of pains in developing microservices, but perhaps most importantly, it saves us time and energy. Bringing a new developer online, as you know, or bringing a new member onto the team as we continue to grow and hire is, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Mythical Man Month. Adding a person to the team actually, gives you a lot of overhead. And so we wanted to try to cut down on that because that means cutting down on cost. And cutting down on cost at any given opportunity also means that you can have more people. And we like having more people if we can. And again, we are hiring. So the sort of the deal though is that it's helped us a lot, and we think it might be able to help other people too. We would like to open source it. Ideally, it would have been done by today. It was not feasible, unfortunately, but that is our intent. So part of the purpose of this talk was to sort of start a discussion, take the temperature, see if people are interested, and then sort of see if people are doing anything similar. And we are, sort of like I said, interested in making it available because it might help others as well. Is the cat thanking people? Okay, great. Okay, so I think that's actually about it. You can feel free to reach out to me at randy@giphy.com if you want to talk or if you're just lonely. It's cool. And need friends, I get it. And Eric@giphy.com is our recruiter's email if you're interested. And feel free to talk to, there's a few of us here. And that thing in the corner there is called Giphy Frame. It's a GIF maker, a GIF photo booth, and it has a bunch of fun sort of Scala-related animations and so forth that you can kind of take your own picture and email out the GIFs of yourself, so please check that out at some point today. All right, sorry, Dustin is kicking me off. All right, but thank you, everybody.